Good afternoon. My name is Frank Liu. I'm here to present as a social scientist how the polls got a new wind after using R. I'm a political scientist. I'm teaching in Taiwan, Kaohsiung, teaching political behavior, political communication, public opinion. I'm also a director of a telephone survey center in my university. But later I enter in the field of the survey, web survey. So I entered a big question about the value of the polls. Is it going down? In terms of prediction, everybody doubts it. Even in Taiwan, and everybody have a concern about the value of the polls. And the people who use the polls for the hypothesis testing is also challenged because the data representativeness is going down. The level of the representativeness is going down because everybody uses a cell phone. So what else we could use, make the best use of the polls? I feel this as a concern and anxiety in my community, and everybody try to combine the data set between the cell phone data and the poll data together, try to weight it. But few of us thinking about how to go into the data itself and look at how to draw the value from it. Today I'm going to just quickly go through the journey I have in the past 2 years using the R package called the FactorMineR. I think I'm here. How many of you using it? Can I know? FactorMineR? Okay, so I'm new to it, just 2 years of trying and error using it. So let's begin with this, small data. If the big data company like Google could invest in small data, what does that mean? Because this van is interviewing people in different cities. And what is this small data used for? If just 500, think about it, just 1,000 people interviewed, how could this small data be used for understanding the people? Why don't you use a web survey or Google Forms just to interview thousands, tens of thousands of people? If small data has a meaning of it, we have to interview them. I wish I am one of them to interview people. But I'm guessing Google knows something by knowing different variables of people, they're connecting the relationship between the variables. And our package helps us to do that in our laptops. So let's look at how the poll data, small data, the image of small data in people's mind. Usually, this is not representative data. It's just a quick poll of the opt-in web survey people. But we can see some pattern here. Poll seems to be trusted, the highest bar. And it's necessary for democracy, the highest bar. But they are not seen to be very objective because we can redirect people to answer yes or no. So people have highest bar, say, doubt it. And everybody is aware of this political. So polls, the value of polls going down. And most of the polls are usually presented bar chart or pie chart, point estimate. That's it. I think that's the first win of the poll, that the traditional way of using it. But multiple correspondence analysis is helping us to find the second win. I would like to use second win because explorative data, small data analysis is still a new term in this industrial polls. So I think that summary quickly we can use, this is MCA, is good for analyzing categorical data, or somebody called it qualitative data. So it's not continuous variable, it's just yes and no, like or dislike. How could be useful to use that other than dependent variable for GOM? Right? So categorical variable has its meaning here now. It's good for analyzing categorical variable. It's good for polls that are limit number of the questions. Think about you have a small list of questionnaire, 15 questions. Cannot be longer, people lose patience. 15 questions, how could you draw information from it? But the MCA allows us to look into these 15 questions and then maximize the information in it. It's good for understanding your respondents. Well, just like a big data analyst, small data set analysts also need to know people, consumers, voters, or readers. They are small, they are people, we just call them people. Political scientists call them voters, and communication scholars call them the readers or consumers. But we need to know them. So small data set help us to understand the 360 degrees of them by inspecting those variables around them. I will give you an example quickly. 4, MCA is good for exploring potential hypotheses. How many social scientists here in this room? Yes? Yes. We know hypothesis testing is important, but how many of us thinking about where are those hypotheses from? I'm educated in the university in an atmosphere to hypothesis testing those gurus or big thinkers' hypotheses and never came out with mine. And there's no soil for me to think about I can create my theory like a guru. But with a small data like this, I feel, well, I will show you it's kind of possible. I'm very excited about that. So thinking about that we could look into the respondents, look at their life, their values, and create our own hypotheses. Creating hypotheses before testing it seems very important to social scientists. And 5, it's good for validating concepts. We are full of concepts and measurement, validity issues in social sciences. How could we make it possible to use small data to validate a concept? So quickly, data is usually compared with the PCA in the left hand. The quality, continuous variable usually analyzed with PCA. But on the qualitative side, the categorical side, we use a CA or MCA with multiple variables using for CA, corresponding analysis. I have to acknowledge and thank these communities of scholars who create these packages and the books, just introduced in probably formally in 2013-14, but still new to social sciences. And 3 packages I'm going to use here is just FactorMineR and the image tool called the FactorExtra. It does always come together to draw pretty pictures, and dplyr for data analysis, for data set analysis. And I'm going to present those 3 data sets. One is a representative data. It has $1 million investment for the people, face-to-face interview. The maximum number is about 2,000, not big, but it's valuable because it's representative of the population. And the Katie telephone survey with 1,000, and the one is smaller than 500 with using my SmilePoll data set as a web panel. I'm going to use the 3 data set to look into the data. Here comes the procedure of MCA. If you are interested quickly, we read in the data and use select the variables. You can see 3 sections of the variables. I pick up the variables that are relevant to nation identity in Taiwan, like party identification, national, ethnic, whatever you can think about related to China, Taiwan, self-identity. All those variables come to the first section. And the second one is a continuous variable as a supplemental variable. You can take continuous variable into it and as a supplemental information for the calculation. So the second section is the V50AR, is how much you think you are Taiwanese, and the next is how much you think about your Chinese. And the last section is supplemental categorical variables. They are useful for the helping the communication with the data. So sex, college, those are kind of a demographics variable, helping us to formulate the 2 or 3 dimensions. Then we have something like a script plot. The help us, like pretty much like everybody knows the PCA factor analysis. We know the first 3 dimensions in this data set are helpful. All the variables are collected with the 3 concepts embedded. So we use this, then we use MCA as a function to create the results. I'll go quickly. Select method, we pick up top 30 important elements, variable categories into account. Variable categories means one variable has 2 options or 3 options. Those options are called the categories. So yes, no counts 2. Male, female counts 2. So if I have 2 questions, then I have 4 categories. I pick up top 30. You can pick up first 70 if you have many variables. Then we can set the argument invisible and hide those variables called individual, hide them, qualitative, supplementary variable, hide them, and then we will just say present variables, just regular variables. Then you can replace them with just hide the variable or show the individual. So use this argument for the presentation. So I'm quickly go through those examples. First, MCA for secant data. Well, I would call this secant data instead of sick data. Philosophically, I would like to say it's not sick data, anthropologically data, but it has meaning in it. It requires subjectivity interpretation of the results, so we could secant. So first, we can put the individuals onto the scatter plot for visual analysis. Just like big data, we have the dots, right? Small data could have that too. This big data plot, but using the 1900, about 2,000 individuals, we can plot them here with the 2-dimension appearing, and you can choose the first and second dimension, first and second dimension, or the second, third dimension into the plot. But I just pick up the first 2. And based on the variable, I can name the axis. Thinking themselves as Chinese, Taiwanese, national identity. I'm Chinese, I'm Taiwanese. I acknowledge my state, I dislike, I disagree my state. So we can see that in the distribution of respondents, which is from a representative data set. We see the same pattern in the 3 data sets. I go quickly here. The 3 data sets could show the similar pattern if you use the same variables. Then, interestingly, we can have a different layer to show the generation difference. If you can use your variable of interest, like male, female, Democrats or Republican, blue and green here. But we use generation, political generation, to show you 4 generations, 5, have a different identities. This is the youngest one who think that this is my Republic of China, but I'm Taiwanese. But back to the earlier, I'm Chinese, this is my Republic of China. So think about in the Lunar New Year time, when the 3 generations sitting together on the table, they usually fight because they don't understand each other. One is say, this is my country called Taiwan. The other side say, no, this is a part of China. Okay, so we could see these 5 generations are embedded into the same group of residents. This kind of visualization hasn't been occurred before this package to me. Okay. So if we have a 5 generation plot into this purple dot, representative of the location of each generation from the sample. So you can see the difference just by eyes. The second generation is the eldest, probably 60 to 70 age. And younger generation, the 5th generation here. Why don't we have the people who born after 1990s? Because that's the limit of the survey, right? Because usually they always ask for the legitimate voters. So they skip the people who under 20s. So I don't have more data. So second, I think the most powerful application of MCAs is from now. To find out the potential relation between the variables or categories. If we look into the data, we can show the relationship between the categories. Notice that they could come from different questions. Not from the variable, it's from different questions. If you ask people, where did you go to buy the tea? When did you drink tea? Did you add sugar into the tea? 3 questions can come up with 6 triangles come together. Probably you will figure out, I usually like to drink black tea with sugar and with my friends. Come from 3 questions, but you could see the combination of clustering of the categories. So I found that, given those triangles, most of the survey questions used in Taiwan for political identity are usually compose the same dimension, which is the Taiwanese Chinese. Usually people think about, argue they have a different measure for different concept, but actually they come to the same concept. That's what the argument we could see visually. So here's a clear picture about how triangles from different questions merge together. 1 underscore 1 means yes, underscore 0 means it says no or reject in the survey. The third part, which is also very little mentioned in the literature, I like this part most, is the evaluating the connection between the concepts and the measurements. Using the Factor Extra package, we can draw this picture with the top 10 dimensions on the column, and each variables as a row. If those questions go together, you compose one concept or one latent concept. You go to the line up under the one dimension. But here, which goes to my inquiry, is this set of questions is about unification and independence from China. Suppose this is a spectrum question, right? Everybody familiar with a little bit of China politics knows that the people in Taiwan are actually concerned about, should I go independent from China or should unification? People think this is a spectrum. Very few people doubt it. If you interview or survey people, do you prefer independence? You say no. That means that it prefers unification. All pollsters, all news reporters believe so. But this is puzzling. This is very puzzling because it doesn't line up with any specific concept. Using representative data, it struck me. And they continue to inspect it now, with 3 data sets, which means this question is not a unidimensional issue. It's not. When I say I'm pro-independent, doesn't mean I don't want unification. That makes everything in a mess. But it probably is true. After inspecting those 3 data sets, we start to thinking about that. And I think this is important because not only me, but that there are 1 or 2 more scholars coming to challenge the traditional conceptualization of measurements, like Engelhardt, the index of values, the post-material. This is challenged by this method. So because of time, I have to stop here. Go to the conclusion quickly.
You're out of time.
I'm over time.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the interest.